Welcome to another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, and that just doesn't hit the same without Brandon Rossi's voice, but no Alan Saunders today. No fear. We got DB joining the show. DB, how we doing?
I'm doing well, man. Feeling pretty grateful today. Did Locked On Steelers last night with Chris, and then hopping on here
Nice.
with you to talk some ball. So,
Wow.
um, getting invited to the two top Pittsburgh Steelers sports podcasts. I mean, I just feel so grateful. And then my daughter's birthday is this weekend, so
There we
I've
go.
got that stuff going on over the next couple of days. So I'm feeling very grateful. I'm ready to get to the weekend. But first, we got some things to talk about.
Happy early birthday to Laurel. It was awesome to be a part of her first Steelers game day experience, I must say. What a ball of energy that girl is, and her getting to go onto the field the first time that she was at a Steelers game too, and being there for it was really awesome. So
Yeah.
hopefully she gets to come back sooner rather than later.
Oh,
But
she'll be there this year. She'll be there this year for
there we
sure.
go. I have a question for you before we get
Mhm.
into questions from everybody else. And it's still Steelers related, of course. I want to know what you think. And maybe there's somebody that has a question here. So I'm stealing their thunder if I'm the one taking it. I want to know what you make of the interest in the safety group, like the top safety group. Like,
Mhm.
sure, if we were talking about like, a Jalen Reed out of Penn State, or maybe some of these mid-round guys, but they're showing interest in guys that like you can make a case for being their pick at number 21. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just keeping all the options on the table because I think that this first round in general is going to be pretty unpredictable because I think that there are so few blue chip players. There just aren't a lot of like true first round grades. So I really think that it's going to be pretty buck wild from, I would say, maybe like pick 15 all the way to like pick 45 ish. Like all of those players on, at least on like my board that I've been like compiling, like there's just a ton of grades like kind of clumped up together in the same position groups. And then from the Steelers perspective, I mean, I think that you could maybe read between the lines that they're just maybe a little bit more concerned about the future of that position.
Mm,
Minkah Fitzpatrick has a 24, correct me if I'm wrong, $24 million cap hit next season. The last 2 years, he's only got one interception. And I think that Minkah has still done some really good things, but if you're paying like top of the line for like a non-premium position, you got to
mhm.
have like extreme impact in the box score,
Yeah.
and even if that's sometimes unfair because that's sometimes out of his control. So maybe there's some conversations about like whether he's like kind of maybe losing a step. I don't know. But then like the other guys too, you look at Juan Thornhill, you look at DeShon Elliott. Those guys are on like 1 year deals, and I think that Elliott definitely punched above his weight last year. He was excellent, I thought, but just I think it's like maybe future planning, and maybe they like
Mhm.
that safety group a lot. I actually am maybe a little bit lower on the top end of the safety group, but I think that the safety
Okay.
group overall is pretty freaking awesome. So
Mhm.
it does kind of hurt the fact that the Steelers don't have a second round pick, but there's a lot of
Yeah.
guys that I feel like can come in and contribute right away. So I don't necessarily know if it's going to come to fruition, but maybe just it might be just more than due diligence.
And I'm glad you included all the safeties currently on the roster, just because it's if they were only showing interest in like a Xavier Watts or
Mhm.
like a very clear Minkah Fitzpatrick replacement, but they're showing interest in free safeties and strong safeties. So like
And
I think that
really,
it's
And
in
really,
slot.
like a guy like Eamon Worry is not really like a true safety. Like I
Mhm.
don't know that I even really feel comfortable about like what his next best projection is to the league. So I mean, he's a guy who played over 200 snaps in the slot last year, and like I even think
Right.
that those numbers are a little bit distorted. I think it's probably more than that. So Malachi Starks, another guy from Georgia, like
Mhm.
he played a completely different role last year than he did the year before. Like he played it more in the slot. So there is some chance that maybe they see these guys as maybe more position versatile, alignment versatile, and maybe that's kind of the solution to the slot. I don't know. It
Mhm.
would kind of be interesting. I think those guys are obviously different body types than they've typically deployed on the inside. But yeah, it is particularly intriguing. I think maybe that's the biggest surprise for a lot of people so far through the draft process.
Minkah, by the way, $24.455 million cap hit. He would have a
Right on.
6.855 dead cap. But the other thing that I'm thinking about within that too is, you mentioned the guy that's also slot capable at safety. That would be interesting. Are they prioritizing? Are they going to prioritize for the first time, seemingly in forever, the
Yeah.
nickel spot? Like, do we see them maybe see the way that the Eagles deployed Cooper to Gene last year and how valuable that was and say, that's what we're looking for. But we know that obviously we take this guy, he can play slot right now, and then step into one of those safety roles in 26, whether it is DeShon Elliott not re-signing or moving on from Minkah Fitzpatrick, whatever that is. Also, real quick, I just want to say this. I don't like to do the whole like speculation thing or like, the hearsay thing. All is, and I know that you hear stuff come out of the organization from time to time too. And I should have asked Alan about this, obviously, if he's heard anything about it. I've heard, you can tell me if you've heard anything, in regards to DeShon Elliott, he's not very happy because it's been made clear to him that he's not getting an extension this summer. I think that could be very interesting too, just adding that into this context and the safety interest.
Yeah, he's not the only guy that I've heard has been kind of given that same type of hint that he's not going to get extended. And there's some stuff I think under the surface that could rise. But I mean, I don't necessarily blame Elliott. I mean, he is like a little bit further into his career. Like he's coming off of by far the best year of his career. You and I think we're huge fans of that signing in general, but like he even exceeded both of our expectations. So I do completely understand what you're saying. As far as the prioritization of a slot cornerback, I mean, how many years in a row have we said, like, is this going to be the year that they're going to take like we're going to see more of an investment at that position? And every single draft cycle, me and you are doing live streams leading up to draft weekend, and we talk about it. And then what happens? Like they end up signing some free agent, and then they kind of roll that for a year. Sullivan. Yeah, or it's like some type of like stopgap veteran option or something like that. So I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things where until they do it, I almost have to like see it to believe it that they're going to prioritize that position. But even, Nick and I were talking about this several weeks ago, I think on a video that we were doing, but about like outside the box, like round one options that like nobody was talking about. And I think he used like Quinshon Judkins. And then I think my outside the box one was Jahdae Barron. And like they haven't had Barron in for a pre-draft visit, but they did spend some time with him at the pro day. I think they took him to dinner along with some other people. So, yeah, I mean, Barron kind of fits into that similar mold. Like he's a guy who's played linebacker. He's played some safety, played outside corner this past year, a lot of ball production. But I think like his best home in the NFL is going to be inside in the slot. And has a lot of characteristics that you look for at that spot. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an interesting thing, especially as these pre-draft visits continue to roll in.
I want to know, you mentioned this to me before we started recording, but a couple people asked about this as well. So Trent asked about this. C. Smitty, which by the way, great name, asked about this. Limited interest in terms of like, when I say limited interest, I'm sorry, not necessarily limited interest, limited defensive tackles being brought in for these pre-draft visits that we're talking about. And I think that that's kind of taken everybody by surprise. Equally as much as like the safety interest, I think people would say this is also something that's like kind of sending them alarm bells for them. Like, where are these top defensive tackles that we're expecting to come in for these pre-draft visits? What do you make of it being more so a group that they're looking at like the day 2 and 3 guys, at least in terms of guys they're bringing in for pre-draft visits?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it has been a little bit interesting. I think a lot of people, including myself, thought that they would maybe be a little bit more well represented at Derrick Harmon's pro day a couple weeks ago at Oregon. They did have a bunch of people at Ole Miss for Walter Nolan. He didn't really he did the on-field workouts, didn't test or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I think that I understand the talking point for sure. I just also like wanted to kind of point out that some of the bigger offensive line names last year, we kind of thought that that's really where they were going to go with that first round pick. But a lot of the bigger names kind of came like later in the process. So I'd just say like maybe a little bit of patience there. You look at Troy Fautanu, I think he visited on April 15th. You look at Zach Frazier, he was a local visit, but I think he visited on like April 12th or something like that. And then even like Mason McCormick, like he was one of their later visits as well. And he was somebody that they obviously prioritized in the middle of the round. So I don't necessarily think there's a bunch of red flags. You brought this up too when we were having some just like offhand conversations, but I think there's like 18 or 19 guys reported right now for the pre-draft visits,
and only 13 have actually taken place. So yeah, less than.
And there's always a couple that get reported and then they get canceled for whatever reason, and then they pivot to other players.
I brought this up to Alan. I don't remember if it was last year, the year before. Yeah, that's the one. I was like,
last year.
Who was the high-profile player? Yeah, I brought this up on yesterday's pod. I can't remember who it was, but that was it. It was Michael Penix.
So I think sometimes like what happens with that, because I actually asked a scout about this at the combine really random conversation. But we got onto this topic, and we we're actually talking about Penix, and he said that a lot of times, like when you see like pre-draft visits get canceled like that, it's because a team will think that a certain player may be available in a certain range, and then they get some intel from whether that player's agent, or they start to gather conversations around the league, and they understand that that player's not going to be available like when they're actually going to have the chance to pick them. So it's kind of like I don't want to say like it would have been a waste to meet with Michael Penix, but he went 8th overall. The Steelers probably, I don't even know, that probably signals to me that they didn't have like a first round grade on him. Like they would have been interested in like maybe like the second or third round. So that's probably one of the things that happened, because he was an early reported visit too. Like everybody was kind of really hyped up about him coming in, and then he just never made it. So, and we see why now. So,
yeah. Alan was mentioning this to me too, like in terms of what they'll do, like, because I know like the Jackson Dart conversation, right? Like coming in for a 30, and he's checked a lot of the boxes, but the one he didn't check, Omar and Tomlin not there at the pro day. And I understand people saying like, they weren't at Fatanu's last year, and likely their first round pick this year, maybe they weren't there. But I just think it's a different ballgame when you're talking about a quarterback as opposed to another position. I don't think that you're going to invest in the quarterback in that way. But anyways, that conversation parlayed into Alan saying, well, you know what I do know has taken place in the past is they'll bring guys in for pre-draft visits that they're not necessarily even like high on. And it's not necessarily like a smoke screen per se, but they'll give the feel like they're much more interested in a player than they actually are.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that too is like gathering information on like teammates. I think that's sometimes helpful too. And I don't necessarily know like how much of it would necessarily be smoke screens. I don't think that they do. Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think that they really do that very much. They're pretty transparent about like their draft and intentions.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to completely waste one of a limited amount, right? Like when you're talking about like informal stuff or whatever, where you have
100%.
unlimited, sure. But if you have 30 of these things, there's a reason that they're bringing in Jackson Dart, even if they're not like super interested in him or don't like him. Like there's some reason that they want to talk to him.
I think that he's definitely on their radar on day 2. I would just be really surprised. Like I know like he's been a trendy mock draft pick recently in the first round, and like I've been pretty transparent that I think that that's extremely rich for my blood personally. But at the same time, I do think that if the Steelers were really going to go that direction in round 1, it would just be a different ball game on the pro day circuit. Like if you think back to like 2022, they were at every single quarterbacks. I mean, I was at the Cincinnati pro day when they came to see Desmond Ridder. I mean, the amount of time that they spent with him after he got done throwing was like, I mean, they were over there for like 10 to 15 minutes. Khan, I believe Colbert was there. Yeah, Khan was definitely there. I remember that. Tomlin was there for a while, and like even every quarterback except for Sam Howell they went to see, and the only reason they didn't go see Sam Howell was because his pro day I think was on the same day as Kenny Pickett's. So that to me, even like this is a long time ago, but even when Mason Rudolph was coming out, Tomlin was at his pro day. So I just think I do agree with you. It's just different, like franchise quarterback, a guy that's going to be like the leader in the room. I think
and them listen, like I understand we have to give it some credence with the interest that they're showing. But at the same time, man, like what a hard pivot it would be to invest in like that much in the 25 QB class after everything has pretty much said that they're throwing that next dart, no pun intended there, in 26. Like the way that they went about the free agents, everything that they've done has basically been them screaming, we want to be a part of the 26 quarterback class. And it would be such a hard pivot to then spend a first round pick on Jackson Dart.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I think it's more of like if he's there day 2 at a specific point, maybe that third round range, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case anymore.
I mean,
like
dude, he could go as high as not. Again, like I think that it's under the realm of possibility. Like, I mean, Tyler Shuck seems to me the one guy that like this is certainly the case where people he's going to get talked about as like a potential first rounder and then not go. But like,
we see that.
If you remember, in 2022, Malik Willis was getting talked about going number 2 overall to the Lions at one point, like not that far away from the draft. Like. This happens every single year, and we'll see how things play out. But while we're talking about quarterbacks, I'll work Hayden's question in here. Other than Ward, which QB in this draft do you think is most likely to become a franchise quarterback?
Oh, man. It's really tough. I mean, I feel like I would just have to stick with my rankings, honestly. I mean, Shadur is my QB2, more of a second-round grade, though, than a first-round grade. Probably going to go higher than that. Seems like he could even land up in Cleveland with the second overall. pick. I mean, there's a lot to like with Shadur's game. For one, just the experience. I think he's a really good decision maker with the ball. I think the way I've kind of described it is he's got like sharpshooter accuracy. Like he can really, I mean, he's just so precise. The ball hardly ever hits the ground. I feel like in the short, intermediate areas of the field, he can like pace people over the middle. I think he's really tough. I think he's got a lot of competitiveness, a lot of grit to his game. He'll take hits. I just think that the offensive ecosystem where he was under in Colorado was a disaster. And I just also like question some of the upside with him. Don't think he drives the ball with a lot of velocity. Some of the deep balls hang with a lot of like too much air under it, forces receivers to work back. I do think that there are times where he's not nearly as aggressive in pushing the ball down the field as I would particularly like. But it really just comes down to tools with that. Like I think if he lands in a particular offense, it would be a situation where he could succeed. I kind of envision him in like a under center, like play action kind of point and shoot type of offense that could kind of utilize his skill set a little bit more rather than like the spread out version that he was playing in college. But there's some bad pocket habits there just because of, the offensive line was pretty horrendous. But I still lean towards like Sanders because he does check a lot of boxes and like what I felt like traditional scouts look for in, the quarterback position.
So my approach to answering this question is going to be, and I don't think it's a likely scenario, but say every quarterback in this draft class hits their ceiling, which one would I take? And the answer for me is Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it's likely that that's going to happen.
Agree there too.
I think I would bank on the small percentage chance of that happening over the chance of anybody else becoming a franchise quarterback. Besides, this question was excluding Cam Ward because I think Shador is going to be a fine starting quarterback. I think Jackson Dart's a fringe starting quarterback. I think there's maybe another guy here in this class that we're not maybe thinking that much about that could end up being a starting quarterback, whether it's Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, if all things get put together. I don't know.
That's not
and I like that's not happening. And I like Tyler Shuck. The injuries really scare me away. And obviously everybody talks about the age, but it's the age because of the injuries. Yeah. Right. So like to me, I would just more than anything else here, if I had to pick one guy, I would just take the dart throw on Milroe and the small percentage chance that he does hit that ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. That's why Milroe was my QB3. I think the upside's really, really exciting. And this dude's a complete freak show. I mean, the arm, complete howitzer. I mean, this dude can really, really drive the football. He's got a quick release. I thought that last year there were some improvements that he made within his game that have kind of fallen to the wayside because of some of the struggles he had down the stretch in particular. But a little bit better pocket management, can still throw the deep ball with really good touch, and just like the athletic profile, like the tools. You look at what he did to Georgia. I mean, that defense is full of like NFL caliber players, like it is every single year, and he gave them a ton of trouble. I mean, there's never been like a pursuit angle on the field that Milroe couldn't outpace. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So just his ability as a runner to throw the deep ball, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be cleaned up. I know it's been a heavy focus for him to clean up just some of the lower body mechanics, just his footwork and things like that I think could potentially help him overcome some of the accuracy issues, which was a significant issue at times last year. But just the overall consistency of his play is still like somebody that I would be pretty weary about, picking on day one. Somebody may do it. But, I think on day two, like when we talk about developmental quarterbacks and guys that you want to invest in, maybe sit for a little bit if you feel like you're confident in your environment, your quarterback's coach, things like that. And another thing I'll just continue to point out, because I say this every time I talk about Milroe, but I've heard like nothing but outstanding things from a character perspective. Like
absolutely, that's why I was
super high work ethic, like leader, everybody in the locker room, like just like gravitates towards him, and like little stuff like that does matter for that position more than I feel like most. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to clean up, but it's like you said, it's a very small percentage of chance that he actually hits his ceiling. But if he does, I mean, you're looking at something pretty special.
I doubt that this is a quarterback, but we'll go to Colin here, who says, "What's your dream scenario for a first round pick?"
I'll probably let you go first because I honestly don't know that I've spent much time. I've been I've been grinding out for the past couple of days. I'm sure that people have seen, or hopefully they have read the receiver rankings and things like that. But I've been grinding out like day 3 receivers, so I haven't been working on very many first round players in quite a while. So I'll let you go first while I kind of think about what I would dream of, because this year is different than I feel like previous years.
Yeah, Cam Ward. No, I assume like that you're talking about obviously within the realm of possibility here.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I feel like the way that I talked about George Pickens on here kind of gets misconstrued at times where people think I'm just trying to like push him out the door, ready to trade him for a bag of balls tomorrow. But with the way that I could like see the board falling, like Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka are probably going to be like my 2 favorite players that could potentially be there. I think they could both be off the board. I certainly think Golden, with the way that he's rising, could be gone within the top 15. But say he's there, to me, I would consider that like my ideal realistic scenario as we sit here right now. I really like Kenneth Grant. I really like Derrick Harmon, but I wouldn't consider those to me like the dream scenario at 21.
Yeah, I mean I feel like that's probably where I would lean. All the players that you mentioned kind of make sense to me, just in terms of like also guys that they've shown interest in. You know, the golden interest I feel like is very real, and it just makes so much sense because, like you said, regardless of what happens with Pickens, I think that there's a lot of like, and I completely get it, but there's just a lot of like fan attachment to George, and I think that that's understandable because he's such an exciting player, and like the highs have been like so incredibly fun. And just like, I understand why people gravitate towards that for sure. I think with Golden specifically, he just to me is like the ideal kind of complement to what Metcalf is. And like when you trade a second round pick and then give up, and make him, a top 5 wide receiver in terms of like AAV, you're going to try to run the passing game. He's going to be the primary funnel. But I still think that one of the biggest questions I have about the passing game next year is like, who's going to be that kind of bucket getter? And I think that Golden, the speed is what it is. Like he can definitely stretch the field for you. I think he high points the football as well as like anybody in the class, despite not being the biggest or longest guy. But what I like about Golden is just like how sharp the cuts are. He's got the in-out quicks. I think he can play on the line of scrimmage. Like he has experience beating press. He could beat off coverage. He's a really savvy and nuanced route runner. I just think that there's a lot of things that you can do with him. And even like Egbuka, I think it totally like different style of player. But Egbuka would make some sense if you want kind of a different archetype of, I think Egbuka is probably best as a power slot. But he could play some Z for you if you did want to get into like the tight, condensed formations, like 12 personnel on early downs and things like that, just because of like how well he blocks, how friendly he is in his routes and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that those guys are probably going to be – it wouldn't surprise me if like the Steelers come up on the board at 21 and those 2 guys are like the highest graded prospects for me in the class at that point in time.
We can work a couple questions that are receiver wise into here. Maybe we're going to be regurgitating the same things that we just said. But the one thing I want to add about Egbuka too, and it kind of is in that same thing as we were talking about with Jalen Milroe, is you're not going to find a bad thing like that anybody says about him, especially like, at the position that Egbuka plays. So rare to see that from that guy. So like, I don't know. I think he's an easy person to buy into. Like, I think he's a very good player. But he offers such a high floor because of the character that he brings to the table too.
And I have a feeling about the question that you're probably about to get to. We're going to talk about another guy like this, but if you go watch Ohio State, which I know you did because you mess with the Buckeyes, you mess with the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
But like if you just go back and watch, I'm actually finalizing my running back rankings right now. You go back and watch like all of the big runs that they hit last season. There are so many that get sprung by Emeka Egbuka, and it's just it's awesome. I think the Michigan State film is one of my favorite games from any prospect in this class. Like all of the different things that they asked him to do as a blocker, slice blocking, digging out safeties. I mean, they had him like inserting into like the B gap a couple times. He ended up taking a linebacker one-on-one and stonewalled him. The linebacker went to the ground. He stayed up. There was just a lot of really cool stuff. I think he's got good upside in that regard, given his frame. But yeah, with Egbuka, you just know what you're going to get. And like, that was a reason why, I was comfortable. I kind of landed on like an early second round grade, but he was my wide receiver 4 in the class. And like I said, there's not a lot. I don't feel like there are many ranges of outcomes but I think that
Mhm.
all of them are pretty good. And I like
Yeah.
that about Ibuka.
All right, we're gonna bring two questions together here just because we're starting to run low on time and these
Mhm.
kind of relate. So Quentin said, do you guys think they're currently shopping George, which is leading to the early round wide receiver or round one wide receiver interest? And Jake said, if Pittsburgh does add a receiver, who is your preference in each of the days? So day 1 guys, day 2 guys, and day 3 guys.
So let's go with the second part of that first. We already kind of talked about Matthew Golden, and I think
Mhm.
Ibuka. Those would probably be what most people would categorize as day one
Yeah.
guys. I
Luther
mean,
Burden. What do you think about Luther Burden?
that's a whole that we could do an entire podcast. Nick and I almost did an entire podcast on Luther Burden, but yeah, I mean the talent's definitely like really tantalizing. The things that he could do with the ball in his hands, the elusiveness, the contact balance as a ball carrier, really good body control down the field, underutilized deep threat. I just thought the effort was so bad last year, man. Like it was tough
Mm.
at times to watch it. Like how often he was jogging off the football, quitting on routes down the field. There's still like there's a lack of detail in his game too. I just some of it I went back and forth if it's like lack of detail or just lack of like feel for actually playing the position. But I do think there's a lot of upside with Burden. But in terms of day 2 guys, I'll kind of
Mhm.
give 2 different favorite options.
Okay.
One is somebody that they've showed a little bit of interest in. One is someone that they haven't talked to, I don't think, to my knowledge at all. One would be Elliott Manor, Stanford wide receiver. So this is more about like if Pickens does get kind of like moved on or whatever. But the thing I
Mhm.
like about Io Manor is by far the best run blocker in the class. There's a lot to like in terms of like his athletic profile. He's a little bit rough around the edges, but he put up almost 300 yards on Travis Hunter 2 years ago. I mean, this dude is still relatively new to the position. He came over from Canada. So like there are still some things that need to be smoothed out, like with his route running, the details, things like that. But he's got good build up speed. He was really productive in a really bad offense, like a horrific offense at Stanford. And then the other guy that
Mhm.
I would mention for day 2 is just Kyle Williams.
Yeah.
I'm fully Kyle Williams
Yeah,
pilled. I don't think that people
dude.
I don't know why people don't like him more, like in the draft
Yeah.
sphere. I think that people do like him a lot after the
Dude,
Senior Bowl, but I
Chris
I still
Sims put
think
him
he's
as
too
wide
low.
receiver 2, and I think that like, I mean, listen, I'm not necessarily co-signing that, but I think
Sure.
that started the conversation, like where everybody's like, okay, wait, let me go back and see what I'm missing with this kid.
Yeah. I mean, he's not that high for me, but
Yeah.
I am like a lot higher on him than
Hmm.
consensus, just because you look at Williams, he's definitely a smaller guy, but he's like Houdini versus press coverage. It reminds me a little bit of like he's a different player than like Deontay, but like it's almost like Deontay in the fact that Deontay was so quick and he was so good at like reducing his surface area. So he was already a smaller guy, but he could like dip his shoulder and he was so quick about like getting guys off balance. You could never touch him, so the press coverage never really bothered him. Williams is the same way. Like even in a phone booth, he consistently wins, but he has more speed. Like he can really stretch the field vertically. That's one of the things I really like about him. He has some deep bombs down the field. And then as a yards after catch player, like this is a dude that took 3 screens to the house last year. So there's an instant acceleration to his game once he gets the
Yeah.
ball in his hands. He's got good vision. I think like he's a way better route runner than what like the offense allowed him to be in college. So yeah, I mean those
Mhm.
two guys would kind of if I'm banging the table for them to take like a day 2 wide receiver if they were to get like an extra second round pick or something like that, that's where I'd want them to go.
Day 2, I want to be different because I would certainly co-sign either of the names that you said. Everybody talks about Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. I'm gonna go with his teammate Jalen Noel, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's for me thinking you could drop him in right now, assuming that George Pickens stays on the roster, and I think he perfectly complements what they need, along with DK Metcalf and George Pickens. He'd be a perfect complement to those two. The other guy I'm going to say, and this is now a replacement for George Pickens, looking for somebody else on the outside, is Trey Harris out of Ole Miss.
Yeah, Harris is a very interesting player, man, because you see the flat, like he's kind of
Mhm.
the way I would kind of describe him best, like he's kind of a flash player. Like you see the flashes, particularly when he's going up against like lower competition, of where he just looks like the next like dominant thing. But kind of another player that ran a really like stripped down route tree. I think one of the things
Sure.
about Harris, like you mentioned, kind of the Pickens thing and whatever, but one of the things
Mhm.
I think that makes George so special is like the ability to create late separation, late in the rep at the catch point. And like Harris, I felt like last year really started to gain a better understanding of like how to use his size, how to use his body to create that late separation with some push offs and, just like understanding how to win with the ball in the air. And I think too with Harris, like you'll see everybody clips the same like 3 plays from this past season, but he ran like 3 blaze outs against like various competition. I think one of them may be against Vandy. One of them was for sure against Kentucky. But you see kind of the lower body flexibility and his ability to change directions at that size. And you kind of get like, oh, like he could be more than just this, slant go ball type of X receiver. So, yeah, I like that. I like that shot as well on day 2 with Harris.
In terms of day 3, I mean, we've talked about Ricky White, obviously. Another guy that I think could be like a potential Pickens replacement, but if you were to tell me you're able to get Pickens under wraps for 25 and you're looking for 26 and beyond, because I'm not sure what this guy looks like in 25, is Ty Felton out of Maryland. I think that there's something to work with there, but I don't think it's like immediate that he's going to be able to contribute in that fashion. And then the last shout that I would give here, criminally underrated, and I'm not just saying this because I've watched him play a ton at Pitt, but in a not great wide receiver class, I think Kanata Mupfield is not being talked about enough.
Yeah, I mean, Mumfield has some route running chops. I like the shout too with, I think Ricky White's been a guy that like with the special teams acumen, he's kind of gotten a lot of hype and deservedly so. Day 3, I mean, it's kind of tough because I'll be honest, like I was struggling to find like day 3 receivers that I was really super invested in. Felton is actually a guy right now that's on like the very, very fringe of my top 100. I don't think he's actually going to make it, but I agree. Just like with his athleticism really stands out. Like he's a threat to like score at any point. Like he can take slants to the house. He can stretch the field for you. I think that the hands are worrisome with him, as often is the case with like these type of guys. It really just depends on day 3. I think, what you want. Like, are you wanting to find like a more complete player that you think may be able to do some different things, all like that maybe check the box and don't have like an overwhelming trait? If you're just looking for a role player that can come in and like do one specific thing, I think that Dante Thornton out of Tennessee could come in and do one specific thing for you, and that's just running a straight line. And I do think that there is value.
They've shown interest. They've shown interest in him.
Yeah, there is value to that. I think Thornton kind of to me reminds me a little bit of MVS, who's kind of carved out. Like, I don't know, MVS. How many teams has he been on at this point? Like, and he played with Rodgers. Yeah. But Thornton, I mean, he literally only runs 2 routes. Like he runs these like post routes, and then he runs straight lines, and he's pretty good at it. Like he's extremely athletic. He's got good size. But there's nothing more else to his game, but I do think his speed is such a weapon that he could probably still carve out like a wide receiver 4 type of role. I kind of envisioned his best landing spot in a spot where he lands in a play action heavy offense that likes to, let receivers work down the field to take shots off play action. And you kind of like allow him to get down the field, even if it's just a clear out guy, like he could probably clear out space for other players working underneath them. So yeah, Dante Thornton, I would say like one of the more surprising watches. He was like the second to last player that I watched was Elijah Badger. He is a Arizona State transfer. He played at Florida last year. His usage was completely different in the last 2 seasons. But he's one of those guys that I don't think has like an overwhelming skill set in any one particular aspect. But he was used as a run after catch player at Arizona State. And then this past year at Florida, like he was able to like kind of work the ball down the field vertically a little bit more and had some really nice moments on film. So he was the guy that I had a day 3 grade on that kind of did pique my interest a little bit. I'll be keeping tabs on where he does end up as a sleeper.
And real quick for my guy too, before we get out of here, do you think that the early round interest signifies anything for George?
Yeah. I mean, this is a really difficult conversation, I feel like, for a lot of people. Like I said, just because like the emotional attachment I think people are having for this. So I don't necessarily know that it's more than them just like keeping options available for them at different points in the draft. I think it's just the way that I would kind of put it, right, is you have 2 X receivers on the roster right now. And even though DK and George are both different players in the ways that they stretch the field, George is this kind of above the rim, body control, contested catch guy. DK is more of like a vertical speed threat. there is overlap in terms of their usage. And like I said earlier, my like concern is that like I don't know if either one of them are detail oriented or good or complete enough route runners right now to be like the bucket getter that you need on third downs to be like a top passing offense. So I think there may be a little bit too much similarities. Now, I do still think it can work. It's just about like, are you going to be able to maximize both players at the same time? And I think that the biggest concern for me isn't necessarily like if George had 2 years left on his contract, I would probably just say like, just let it play out. Like, let's just see what it looks like next year. But George is an impending free agent. So I think the conversation is like, oh, like let them play next year together. And then, you know, you just deal with the problem the year after. From one of the things that I understand is like they've made no indication that they're interested in extending him.
No,
and that's not going to happen.
And I also don't think that they're necessarily shopping him like I think they're preparing for him to make it ugly potentially. That's the
thing. That's the thing that I think so many people are missing. And like I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, which is completely fine. I understand it, but I think that's what people are missing. Would you rather do it now on draft weekend? And even though I think that this is a below average wide receiver class, but would you rather do it now and get a guy that you're really excited about being a compliment to DK, who you just made this huge investment in? Or would you rather say, okay, let's try to play it out and play like the comp pick game? I know a lot of people are like into the comp pick thing right now. The problem with that is like you end up getting towards training camp and then there's going to be some other extensions announced. TJ Watt's going to get a new deal. Maybe one other player is going to get a new deal. And George's going to be like, I'm not showing up. And like you said, like from what I understand, like there's a chance that it could get ugly. And then you're dealing with like the distractions, you know, if he requests a trade, whatever, because like he's not in their long-term plans, then you could potentially find yourself in a situation where you were in last year where you only have one receiver. So I'm just trying to like, my thing is like, I kind of know where this is headed, like the end game of it. Like he has maybe this year left and that's it. So to me, I would just rather prefer getting out in front of it. You know what I'm saying? And going that route. If there's a guy that you're really confident in, that doesn't mean you just trade George for like the 120th pick in the draft. Like I'm still trying to get like at worst an early third round pick. Like that's the difference for me. Like I would not trade regardless of how ugly he wants to make it. I'm not settling for anything less than that.
Sure. Good stuff. He is Steelers DB on the pod, but he is dad DB off the pod. He's got to go to Disney on Ice. So we'll get DB out of here. DB, tell the people they find you.
Yeah, at Steelers_DB on Twitter and YouTube. And you can find all my written work at SteelersNow.com. I just posted my top 15 wide receiver rankings. You guys can go read those. I'll have running back rankings and interior defensive line sometime next week as well. So
that's what we need.
We're getting to the home stretch. Not very much sleep going on right now in my household, but this is my favorite time of the year. So I appreciate y'all having me on to talk some ball.
There we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today. Question for a future episode, all that good stuff. If you were listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast's from, just search Steelers Afternoon Drive, give us a 5-star review, subscribe over there, do the same thing over on TikTok, hit us with a follow, and then find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Derrick Bell and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.